anyway, this is once again a Georgia marble. And so we can remove this biological growth if we do it in the proper way, and we don't want to use any harsh chemicals. We don't want to deteriorate the stone. Something like bleach will kill the growth, but it'll also slowly destroy the stone, so it's not recommended to ever use bleach. And a lot of other things related to that that are detrimental. We don't ever want to put an acid on it, and we don't want to use high pressure washing either on historic stones, because it will clean them, but it'll also take away a thin layer of stone in the process. However, a stone, these don't really need anything, but this Clardy and Evans and Parker, and I'm not sure about Latab behind it, or however you pronounce their name. I can't tell if that's granite, is what I'm saying. But granite monuments can be pressure washed. I mean, that's what the Elberton granite industry would recommend if they need cleaning. So you have to have a distinction between the two. And also, actually, you don't have to move, but I'll just show you something to stay where you are. That you see these these are raised markers. This is a single raised marker that's like a pretty large double raised marker. And you see the way the outer edge looks pretty clean where it's polished, and right on the inside here, like where the book is, like an open book, there's a lot of black there. And so, and on this one here, even better example, you see the way the polish is still remaining quite clean, and there's black in the areas that are called panels. And so what they do in modern manufacturing a lot is they'll remove some of the polish, and the reason they do that is to contrast it with the color and aesthetically. And then however, the biological growth takes root in the unpolished area much more quickly, and that's why you see the uneven staining there. Anyway, D2 has become the top cleaner for historic gravestones for quite a number of years now. Now we can spray this right onto this stone like this. We do not have to pre-wet it. There's different ways we can use it, but one of them actually is to just spray the stone and walk away, okay? It's not going to give quick results, and it's not going to be like, you know, fun, like, because you're not going to see a big improvement right away. It's going to actually look worse temporarily. But that is an option. It's not going to be harmful to the stone. But what we're going to do here today is we're going to do application, and then give it a little time to dwell, stay wet, and then we're going to brush and add water and rinse. Now what we see is an immediate color change here. That's a chemical reaction, and that's a really good thing, because when we see this immediate color change, we know we're going to get fairly significant, fairly quick results. Now this is just undiluted D2 in a quart sprayer. Now it'll be much quicker to apply it with another sprayer, and I just poured it out of the gallon. Also, it's the same solution, it's undiluted, but with this I can spray it on much more quickly without squeezing the trigger again and again. And so I'm just going to apply it to the stone, and we're seeing a bit of a color change, and then we'll kind of go from there. So how many of you have been cleaning stones already? About half and half? Quite a lot. But then how many haven't? Okay, smaller group actually. So we won't spend a huge amount of time on this, but we're, you know, go through the demo, answer questions, and then people can try their hand at this, and we'll move into doing some other repair work. So that's pretty good. So now it's, you know, it's been applied, and as I said before, in many situations I do application only, and like 500 stones, and like I'll apply it with a bigger pump, you know, sprayer, or some places use like backpack sprayer or whatever, and then it will slowly clean, but it takes a period of time. All right, so we're going to talk about brushes and a couple go over a couple options for techniques. Actually, first I'll start with plastic scrapers. So if we have raised lichen, we can use plastic scrapers. It'll save time. We want a soft plastic that's flexible, and the idea is these are inexpensive, less than $1. The plastic wears away pretty quickly. They tend to work best when they're new because they have a pretty sharp edge on them, a little bevel on it. But the idea is that these save time, and just to back up a little, I mentioned this kind of before we started doing this. If this stone has any, like if it is sugaring, if it's spalling, that's a term for little bits of stone kind of flaking off bigger than sugaring. Or if there's delamination separating along bedding planes, we don't want to do anything aggressive, and probably application only or very light brushing would be all I'd recommend. But you know, so now we can, I recommend not dry scraping lichen like this, because you'll breathe it all. If you want to save on a little product, you could pre-wet it with water and scrape. and then apply the cleaner. But with only some areas of lichen, in my opinion, it's not generally worth the time. So anyway, we can come in with the scrapers now, and the idea, and we can, you know, do it that way, or we can kind of brush it off. And so the idea is that it's just going to save some time, and from the brushes getting clogged up. And so if there's raised lichen, scraping is an option in some situations. In many situations, you don't need the scrapers at all. So it's just an option, that's all. Okay, so now we'll talk about brushes. And so there's going to be two kind of families, primary different bristles that are used on brushes today. And so and the brushes can be all different shapes. But I'm talking about the bristle itself. And so this is a natural bristle that's called Tampico, and these they feel pretty firm right now, but actually they get much softer when they get wet. They soften when they get wet because Tampico, being a natural fiber, it absorbs a lot of the water or the cleaner, and so they get much softer. So they're considered soft to medium soft, and they're very friendly to the stone. And this is actually a historic brush called a plating brush that was used somehow in the plating process. And this is more of a block brush. These were originally the same color, but this one is was used and not cleaned that well, so it's still a little dirty from the last event. Now the other, and so this is natural bristle brush, and so again, these, when they get wet, they get quite soft. Disadvantage to these, they're hard to clean after you use them. They take a long time to dry. Most brushes today are synthetic bristle, like this version. It looks quite similar, but this is a synthetic, like a polyester. And these vary a lot on how aggressive they are. In other words, soft to touch. And so you shouldn't use something, generally speaking, that you wouldn't run across your hand. And some brushes are, you know, pretty rough and aggressive with much firmer bristles. So you want to, you know, take that into account. This style brush is called a fender brush. Originally, this shape was used for cleaning fenders, probably on wagons before cars. Not really sure the exact history. I will say that then we have some smaller brushes, and I think I might have brought a couple different styles here, if there's any in here. Here's two different styles. And these are not metal. These are also like a synthetic, like a polyester. They vary a little in how firm they are, but these would be used in tighter areas or carving or places that are hard to get to. And some people like to use these like little kind of bamboo skewers to get in tight areas as well. And so these are all options. And I'll say one other thing, that all our brushes are manufactured. These brushes are actually made in Texas by Magnolia Brush, which unfortunately is, as far as I know, the last significant American brush manufacturing company. These are actually made in America. The vast majority of the brushes you'll see at home centers are synthetic and mostly, as the euphemism is, imported. And so we try to buy the best quality American products first, as much as possible. Okay, we'll go ahead now, and I'll start with a small handheld sprayer. And just a little bit about sprayers. When you fill this up, you have to make sure it catches the threads. You know, I'll just go through it because people seem to have some issues. You don't want to fill it up all the way. You need to leave room for air. This was done perfectly because it's going to build up air pressure and spray with it. So if you fill it up to the top, it won't work, and you could just destroy the sprayer by pumping it. All right, you got to make sure you catch the threads properly so it screws all the way in, and then you got to do it pretty snug so it makes a seal. Otherwise, it won't build up air pressure. Okay, so it'll pump up pretty quickly. And now also, it's going to have an adjustment from a stream to tighten it up a little, and it'll mist out a little like that. And so, and now I'll come in with this small Tampico block brush. First, I'm going to wet the brush. Okay, and then I'm going to re-wet the stone a little bit to keep it like wet and active. And then we can just come in and start brushing. Okay. And we're going to get immediate results here that are pretty impressive because I saw the color change and just the way this growth is on it. It's not going to take everything off, but it's going to take a lot off. Now, a lot of time what I'll do is I'll actually have the sprayer, and I'll kind of do it on both sides so people can see. So I'll just keep pouring water on it like this. And what I see a lot of time at workshops is like people will wet it with the D2, and then they'll just start brushing and brushing and brushing, and it's very dry, and they're actually grinding it with dirt, and that'll clean it, but it's actually pretty aggressive because, you know, it's kind of almost like using a cleanser. So I don't really want to recommend that so much. Now I'll just mention this also. This is a really cool thing. This comes with a regular pump like a typical sprayer like this would, but this is actually an upgrade, and this is a lithium-ion battery power head replacement. This is sold as a 2-gallon version only with this, but then if the battery goes dead, you have nothing. This fits the 1, 2, or 3-gallon version, and these are also sold separately. All our sprayers, well, actually we have 2 companies. These aren't even listed. Those are from Germany. But these are from Fountainhead, which is based in upstate New York. They're, internationally sourced parts, but they're actually assembled in upstate New York. And Fountainhead's been making sprayers since, I think, about 1900. Anyway, we'll hit the button here. And I didn't charge this yet. I think this is the 4th day I was running it with a new battery. And I have 2 more spare ones charged, but I'm surprised. So what'll happen is it'll start blinking when it's going dead, and I should have charged it, but I didn't think of it. I was busy, and so it's still working. It'll build up 24 psi, and then it shuts off. There's a regulator built in. It charges with a little like a phone charger in about an hour or 2, and so this will give you more pressure than a regular sprayer, and you don't have to pump. And so they did the math on it. They say that you spend almost 20% of the time messing around with the pump. I think their actual number was 17%, according to Fountainhead's research. But anyway, so this way you don't have to pump, and it's a lot more fun. And and we can see this made quick improvement. I only brushed to there, so you can see the difference where I brushed and where I didn't brush. And I'll just continue and finish the face. I'll knock off some of this heavy soiling on here and continue. So D2 is cleaning with chemistry, ultimately not with acids, because most cleaners or many cleaners are going to be either oftentimes a low pH, and so they're going to be acidic, and D2 actually is slightly alkaline. But the cleaning action is primarily coming from something called quaternary ammoniums, but it's also mixed with surfactants. That's what's making the suds, and then also wetting agents, which make it more effective. So I'm going to give it a rinse now, and we can see this is immediate improvement. So just to be clear, though, even though we applied the cleaner and we brushed and we rinsed, we're not rinsing it all off. Some of it is lodged under the surface of the stone. And so you have to realize that stone is very porous, especially when the polish is gone, if there was a polish once. And so it absorbs a lot. And so this is the exact reason why if you put something like you shouldn't, like a bleach on or an acid on, it'll get drawn under the surface, and then it will do damage after the fact. Like later, it'll keep damaging it. And like things like, say, a sculpture in front of a church or something, and they thought they were doing the best thing for it, and they bleach it every year to keep it clean, and you will tend to see it turn like a pink or an ugly tan, and in really bad situations, when it's really been done a lot, it'll just start to disintegrate. And so this is not something that I'm coming up with. There's a lot of science behind this. And I'll also defer to something that your tax dollars pay to it, whether you want it or not, which is the NCPTT, which stands for the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. They're out of Natchitoches, Louisiana, and they have videos and stuff. And the person that does the most outreach is Jason Church. We're friends. We've collaborated on many events together. But anyway, he has a science degree, a master's degree, and he does testing on things. And so about how cleaners are harmful and many other related subjects. And so D2 has proven to be completely safe, and I will say we sell a huge amount. There's other distributors, and so we don't own the product, but we are I think the biggest distributor, or one of the biggest, and we sell it up to drums, and places like Gettysburg buy drums of D2. That's what they use. And so Mount Auburn, which is the oldest garden cemetery in America, in Cambridge, right over the Charles from Boston, they buy drums of D2. So yeah.
So D2 can be used on any stone, limestone, marble?
Correct. It also works really well on other materials. In fact, there was an article in Preservation Magazine now a few years ago of a Frank Lloyd Wright wooden structure that had to be reconstructed, to be relocated or something. They treated, the conservator specified, and they treated every piece of wood with D2 to kill any microorganisms within the wood before it was reconstructed, to make sure that, you know, nothing came back, you know, as far as bugs and you know, things that would cause damage later. It also works really well on things like canopies, canvas, tents, campers. So it doesn't affect, it's not harmful for any of those materials.
Vinyl siding?
What's that?
Works on vinyl siding too.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll go much further. So you can see this was pretty good, really good example. We had a huge improvement very quickly. Also, we're going to see that this will get brighter and whiter just as the stone dries. Stone is always a darker color when it's wet. There is veining within this, and that's a variable mineral content, so that's not actually soiling on the surface. That's, you know, the geology of the stone. So some of this discoloration, not all of it, but some of these lines right here clearly are at least partially geologic based, and they're not just superficial staining. So any other questions or comments about any